Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with some quick updates from Ryujinx. So as of version 1.1.1223, they implemented a GPU fix that fixes some things in a bunch of different games. It fixes fog in the Princess Peach Showtime demo. It fixes Zed fighting in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It fixes puddles of water and carpets in No More Heroes 3. And it fixes fences and the floor in special stages in Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And as of the latest version, 1.2.2.4, there's a fix here for touchscreen controls on Windows. Ryujinx is 100% free open source and doing well. And speaking about doing well, next up we're talking about something that's not doing too well. And that's Suyu, arguably the most popular fork of Yuzu that's out there. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on Suyu, I am just being realistic. If you're a fan of Suyu, if you're excited about it, you may have to temper your expectations. I don't think development on this is going to go as quickly as you might think. I mean, for reference here, the original Yuzu team is no longer working on this project, and with the original Yuzu team gone, so is their knowledge. Yes, this is open source, but at the same time, people have to understand how it was coded, why certain things were coded in, and how everything works. Sedjoy Killer does a great job of summing this up. Yuzu's codebase is very complex, and it will not be easy to understand everything quickly. Bunei and his team are great engineers with a lot of talent. Yuzu is the most advanced emulator available, it's state-of-the-art. It's necessary to document everything in order to continue development. Not about the UI stuff, but about the emulation stuff. And one of the developers, if I'm not mistaken, says we've actually attempted this in a couple ways with ChatGPT. Now, I would personally argue against saying that Yuzu is the most advanced emulator out there, but that's not the point. The point is, it seems apparent they're struggling to understand the code and understand how and why it was written. Fortunately, for the sake of their project, it seems that they're trying to use every resource available to understand and help them develop. Whether or not they're serious about using AI is one thing, maybe it'll help and maybe it won't. And to further drive the point home about project knowledge being critical, take a look at this engine for example. Imagine just handing it to someone and saying, you know what, improve on this design. A mechanic might be able to look at it and after understanding it, possibly find some ways to make it better. The average person though, probably not. Now the engine is only one piece of that vehicle, arguably one of the most important pieces of it, but at the same time there are other pieces to understand. The average person may be able to do something like change the mirrors, change the interiors, or slap on a fresh coat of paint. And that's where I think things are going to be with Suyu. We might see some minor appearance changes, maybe some minor configurations, but at the core of emulation, I don't see it getting better anytime soon. All of this ultimately is one of the big problems with forks of emulators where the developers do not have intricate knowledge of the project. Yes, sometimes forks can be great, for example, Citra MMJ in performance. But at the same time here, more often than not, forks are just window dressing. So getting back to Suyu, and again I want to point out, I am not betting against Suyu, I'm just saying I don't think development on this one is going to be very fast. Yes, there may be some visual changes, possibly some new features, but in terms of core performance, I don't expect this getting better anytime soon. I could be wrong though, and maybe I am. But speaking about getting better, next up we're talking about Project Plus, which is a mod for Super Smash Bros. Brawl on the Nintendo Wii, and Project Plus just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, version 2.5.2 is the latest update. We've got a whole bunch of bug fixes and improvements. They've added SDXC card support for console users. They've added a whole bunch of new costumes and tweaked and revamped a whole bunch more. They've improved animations and even more on a whole bunch of different characters, including Ganondorf, who now has facial expressions when using sword and punch taunt attacks. There's been changes to music, improvements and tweaks to stages, changes in item behavior, and some brand new modes here. For example, they added War Mode to the special Brawl menu, KO players to steal their stocks. If you are curious about this project and wanted to learn more about it, I'll drop a link in the description below and feel free to check it out. Next up, we're quickly talking about PS Vita emulation on PC with VITA3k, and VITA3k just got a small update here that has a minor game fix. Now it's worth pointing out I say it's a small change just because of the impacts to the end user, but the work required to get here may not have been small at all. Anyways, this fix here is for character textures in Phantasy Star Nova. with memory mapping and surface sync enabled. And speaking about game fixes, next up we're talking about PS2 emulation with PCSX2, and if you're a fan of Ace Combat, you're gonna like this update. At the time of filming, the latest update is version 1.7.5611, and some of these updates appear to fix textures in Ace Combat. Here's the before and here is the after. The other update appears to be for Vulkan and Nvidia users, and they tested out Lego Batman. So here's the before, and we can see some texture issues or some possible flickering in this area. And here's the after, it's been fixed. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo GameCube and Wii emulation with Dolphin, and Dolphin has just introduced a brand new feature. And this is on the latest development version of Dolphin, so if you go to dolphin-emu.org and click on download, scroll down to development version and pick up the latest one. And on a side note, if you wanted to be specific here, this update was implemented as part of 5.0-21194. Now this feature is specifically for Wii emulation, and it's in regards to the sensor bar. They say they've implemented IR pass-through for emulated Wii modes. This allows the sensor bar to function mostly correctly for emulated Wii modes, allowing Wiimotes to be used in netplay while using an actual sensor bar without having to rely on gyroscope-based pointer emulation. To enable this, they say to reset an emulated Wiimote and then to check the box for enable under point pass-through. Moving on, and we're talking about Launchbox, and for reference here, Launchbox is not an emulator, it's an emulation front end. It works with your ROMs and your emulators to organize everything all in one nice neat place. So Launchbox version 13.12 has just released, and we've got a couple of brand new features, automatic ROM imports and an advanced search. So for the automatic imports, Launchbox will create the folders for you and you drop in your ROMs, and then Launchbox will monitor those folders for brand new games. And as for the advanced search, they've introduced brand new options here to make locating games a heck of a lot faster. And speaking about games and ROMs, next up we're talking about oxyROMon, has CLI ROM organizer written in Rust. CLI stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Command Line Interface. So version 0.18.0 just released. We've got some bug fixes, new features, and improvements. For example, they added support for ZSO files, and they added a flag option here to track and delete foreign files in a ROM directory. Next up, this is a real quick one. It appears the original Xbox is getting a very inexpensive mod chip. It turns out it's based on the Raspberry Pi Pico, which doesn't set you back a whole bunch, and the code is going to be open source. If you're curious about this project and wanted to learn more, you can learn more on the Xbox Scene Discord. I'll drop a link to this tweet in the description below. And speaking about tweets, check this one out from Infidelity, who is well known for porting NES games to SNES games. And Infidelity has just ported Mike Tyson's Punch-Out to the SNES. Moving on, and we're talking about some brand new game studios. The first one here is Sundio Games, created by Noah Copeland. Noah Copeland is well known for Sonic Triple Trouble. And Noah says, introducing Sundio Games, here to bring you pixel-perfect indie adventures. This is the brand I'll be releasing commercial games under. Unfortunately, that's all I know about this one, but I'm a huge fan of indie games, so let's see what happens. The second studio announced is Empty Vessel, and apparently this is composed of people from ID Software and Naughty Dogs. They're going to be focused on immersive first-person shooters, I'm assuming AAA games. The next game studio here, we don't know if it's a game studio or what it's going to be, but the Pokemon Company has registered a new subsidiary called Pokemon Works. No idea what's going to happen with this one. If you know, let me know in the comments below. Speaking about not knowing stuff, this was a tweet from the Vampire Survivors account today, and it points to Triple I Initiative. And here is the page. I'll drop a link to it in the description below. It says the Triple I Initiative, a mysterious teasing page by the studios behind Darkest Dungeon, Risk of Rain, Slay the Spire, Vampire Survivors, V Rising, and many others. And the next announcement is in about 15 days. I wonder what this is going to be. And the third studio that was announced is Giant Skull, and apparently the director of the Star Wars Jedi series of games is behind this one. And they plan on making action-adventure games, immersive and AAA. Next up, if you're a fan of classic RPGs, you may be a fan of this. Grandia HD Collection has been announced for PlayStation and Xbox. And on top of that, if you're looking for a physical version of this game, it appears that limited run games will have you covered. Pre-order start on March 15th. Next up, we're quickly talking about PS3 modding, and if you're interested in PS3 modding news, I'll drop a link to this post in the description below and feel free to check it out. Apparently, PS3 custom firmware 4.91 has released. This was made out of the official firmware version 4.91 that Sony just dropped a while back out of nowhere. Next up, we're quickly talking about Activision, and it appears that quality assurance workers have unionized over there, and it's one of the biggest unions, or if not the biggest union in the US video game industry. Apparently, it's got something like 600 people. The kicker here is that Microsoft continues to keep its commitment to let workers decide for themselves whether or not they want a union. And they say over 1,000 video game workers at Microsoft now have union representation. In a world where game studios are cutting people left, right, and center, I'm wondering if this is going to change that outlook. I'm wondering if other employees from other game studios are going to try to unionize as well. And last up, we're talking about Roku, and it appears that Roku has been hacked and 15,000 accounts have been breached, and hackers are selling them online. The kicker here is that Bleeping Computer is reporting that the accounts are being sold for 50 cents each. From my understanding, Roku has contacted the people who were affected, but if you haven't been affected and you've got a Roku account, I'd advise you to possibly change your password. On top of that, if you've got a Roku account and you've been locked out of it, you might want to check your credit card history. They say here, in a limited number of cases, the hackers attempted to purchase streaming subscriptions. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.